Hello and welcome to this week's Programming 2 lab. This is week 8 where we're going to look at exceptions in the lab. So after completing the lab, you'll be able to understand the basic features of exceptions, the try, catch, and finally blocks, use exceptions to develop robust interactive programs that can withstand errors occurring from incorrect user input, and develop application-specific exceptions that improve your code's reusability. So getting started, check out this YouTube video at the channel given by this link, and make sure you download the latest lab paper, this sheet here, and log into your account to get started. So we're going to cover the exception basics, and exceptions are used in Java to handle exceptional events that interrupt program execution. When an error occurs, an exception is thrown. So we'll see some examples of exceptions throughout, but for example, reading input from the user that does not match the expected format. So for example, entering a word rather than a number, opening a file that doesn't exist, or as we saw in the lecture, division by 0 or using invalid array indices. So we're going to skip to exercise 1 and create a class. So the class here is called public class exercise 1. And we're going to implement this method here, which causes an exception to be thrown whenever this is set to true. So let's go into Eclipse and start that now. So we create a new Java project. We can call it Lab8. And we create a new class, which we call exercise 1. So that creates a class for us, and we add the public static void main to start our program off. Now for this, we're going to create a static variable or a class variable. We're going to call it cause exception true. Now we're going to catch an exception as follows. Let's start by doing this step by step. System.out.println, and then we're going to say something like try block executed. Now, if cause exception, then we're going to throw a new exception. This is an exception. Now you'll notice that there is an error that occurs. Now because we're actually throwing an exception, we need to surround it with a try catch block. We can actually tell the method to throw it, and then the try block is going to be in another method, but we're going to follow this here. And let's modify this slightly to have the try catch block like that. So cleaning that up, it looks like this. So we have a try block here that says system.out.println try block executed, and if cause exception, again let's move that there, then we're going to throw a new exception. So you'll notice the use of the keyword that we know, new, so that creates a new object, and this exception here is a class. So of course this exception, and then in brackets here is the constructor, which takes as input a string that explains the exception, and that's for someone to read to understand where the error occurred. And we have the throw keyword that actually throws the exception. And down here we have the catch block that catches it. It catches an exception E, and it's of type exception. And we're going to print a stack trace, and we'll maybe also print an error. System.err.println catch block executed on, and maybe give an output of the exception. Remember, these are errors, and in Java, errors are handled as objects. So what we do when an error occurs is we create an object that represents the error, and then we can write a program about it, how to handle it and what to do. So here we've written a try, which causes an exception to be thrown, and then a catch block to handle it. And we can round this out by having a finally block, which looks a little like this, system.out.println, and we just give it something like this. Finally block is executed. Now, if we run this program, what do you think happens? Well, we get this. Try block executed. Maybe we can make it a little bit nice looking. So here we have try block executed. If cause exception, and it does, it's true, then throw new exception. So we have this exception. So what happens is that the catch block catches it, and it prints out in an error code, in an error console, catch block executed on, and then it prints out java.lang.exception, which is this bit here. This is an exception. And then it prints out the print stack trace, which is here. This is an exception. That's the error that occurred. And where did it occur? It occurred at exercise1 class, at this method, at this line in this file. So it's all very clear. And then lastly, the finally block is executed. So let's step through this. The best way to learn this is to step through it to see how this works. So running my code, I can start here, system.out.println, try block executed. If cause exception, it's true, so it throws a new exception. So once it does that, it calls a catch block, and it prints out system.error.println, catch block executed on, and then it calls the toString method for e, like that. So it prints out this here. That's what happens with when you write e, it prints out this, and this toString prints out the this is an exception error message that you gave it, and java.lang.exception, the kind of exception. And then we also print the stack trace. So what's on the stack at the moment? And there's only one method on the stack. It's the main method, the method that we're in. And of course, finally is executed here. It's always executed. Finally block is executed, and then we're done. So what happens when we set cause exception to false? Well, as you might expect, we run this, and we call try. Try block is executed here. Now we're at cause exception, false. And you'll notice it skipped over this catch block. It's done with executing in the try block, and it's completely finished. Then it goes to finally. It always prints out finally. That's used regardless if there's an error or not, and it prints that out. Now, the second part of this exercise is to create a new class exercise 2 and modify the main method from exercise 1 such that 10 exceptions are thrown and caught. When the exception is caught, an output is made to the error stream system.error. So for example, exception caught, etc. So let's see how we can do this. This is quite straightforward. So what we could do is we could create a new class. And paste in the old one, making sure you rename it. Now, what we could do is what? A for loop. But where could we put the for loop? Well, we could put it here. Like that. And then we can say this is an exception. You don't have to write this out, but we can. But we can write exception caught, and maybe also the number, which exception that was caught. Alternatively, you could write this up here. You can leave that up to you what you want to do. Maybe we could write it up here, give it the I like that. So it's counting the exception. And then we output E. Not exactly like the output given in this exercise, but it's close enough. The point is to use a for loop. So let's find out what this does. Now we have to make sure that the exception is thrown like this, giving it true cause exception. So let's find out what this does. So stepping through again, I pressed F6 to step through my code. Try block executed, throw new exception, exception caught. Now, of course, it always prints out this java.lang.exception, which is fine. We can further print out the stack trace if we feel like it. We can throw another exception, exception caught. We need not print out the stack trace, but sometimes it's very useful for determining the cause of the error. So this is just to give you some insight into what's really happening. And all the way, you can step through it, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and we're done. All right, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you in the lab this week. Goodbye.